So I shared this with my C12 group, and one of the business owners in one of the groups said, well, John, you're a very disciplined investor. You track your return on investment, your key performance indicators. How do you assess the effectiveness of the nonprofits that you give money to? And I was gobsmacked because I didn't have an answer. So I started calling executive directors of all the places that we were giving money to and asking them, how do you track your effectiveness? What are your KPIs? The answers were bad. They had no idea what I was talking about, or they were tracking things like social media posts and stuff. I'm like, well, I'm not giving you money to go on Facebook.
Are you tired of working more for less profits in your home service business? What if I could show you $100,000 in hidden annual profits in your business in less than 3 minutes? Would you be interested? And not only show you where, but how to create that 100K in 6 months or less without additional advertising or marketing spend guaranteed. Just go to sharpenthespearcoaching.com to see how truly simple it is. That's sharpenthespearcoaching.com. Do it now. And we are back on STS Sharpen the Spear podcast with another incredible guest. I've got John Knowlton with us. And today, John, as we always do, nobody knows John as well as John. So, John, we need the backstory. Bring us up to speed. And we're going to get into what we're going to talk about today. And it's going to be fantastic.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Richard. And I know you like to be organic and just flow with the conversation. So I'll give you 3 or 4 points, and then you just jump off and I'll flow with you, man. All right. So I'm a husband to Julie. I'm a dad to 4 kids. One's a stepdaughter, one's a biological son, and 2 we fostered and then adopted. So if there's another way to get kids, don't tell me what it is. I don't want to know. Let's see. I've been a bivocational guy my whole career. So I've been a part-time pastor of First United Methodist churches and then non-denominational full gospel churches. I've been at the same one for over 20 years now. And I've built businesses alongside of those other things I've been doing. So the most successful one was a wealth management firm that we grew by mergers and acquisitions. And that hit my business goal. I wanted to manage $1 billion of client assets. We were at $1.25 billion in 2020. And so we'd hit my business goal. And then one of our adopted kids was coming home from a residential treatment program. And my wife raised her hand and said, hey, I might need some help here. So I took the opportunity to sell my interest in that wealth management business to my partner group and then took a sabbatical. And in 2021, we became COVID RVers and did the epic RV trip around the country. I spent my first couple of days on the slopes of Mount Rainier and said, oh my gosh, what have I been missing? So now I've started to do mountaineering and climbing the Cascade Peaks with my older kids. And then since about 2022, I've been doing something called C12, where I'm coaching Christian CEOs on how to build great businesses for a greater purpose.
Okay, so John and I have just met. All right, I'm just going to put out there. We're going to talk about alignment here for a second. Okay, so my turn. 3 biological, 3 adopted. Okay, all within 3.5 years. Okay, so got them all at birth. Well, biologicals were at birth, and so were the adopted. Very cool. So I got that. The business thing, same thing. I've done 28 of the 14ers so far in Colorado. Okay. So I like that. I haven't, we were looking to do Rainier, a little ice climbing on that. Actually, McKinley, I want to do Denali, but I never made it, but super cool. The business, I love the sabbatical aspect, right? I lost everything, started over, had to do that a little bit different than you, but, I love it. The bivocational as a pastor and working, I love that. That is the Apostle Paul, right? I mean, I love it, dude. So I run men's ministries. I do small group Bible studies. I do all kinds of stuff, right? Same thing with you. So again, real alignment there, right? So 2 guys who've never met each other. Here we are doing a lot of the same things. It's so cool. Very cool. Yeah. My kids now I got a 20-year-old in the Marine Corps. I got 2 19s, 2 18s, and a 17.
Yeah.
So they're kind of all doing their stuff, and it's really cool. Back to you though. Let's get into what you're doing now. What's the main focus right now for you? I know you're kind of coaching. You do the C12 stuff. I'm familiar with that. Very cool. So let's get into that a little bit.
Yeah. So C12, for those who aren't aware, is a peer advisory group for Christian CEOs. So peer advisory, let's start there. So we gather a group of business leaders, owners, and CEOs. In this case, they happen to all be Christian. And we meet once a month for a day-long business retreat. So it's kind of like a small group that lasts 7 hours. And so I'm walking in through and facilitating the conversation with some structure, of course, but really the questions are, how do we build a great business? Number one. Second, how do we build a business that can actually be their primary ministry? You know, lots of Christian business people, they're building their business. The church doesn't have any idea what to do with them except ask them for money. And so they see their business primarily as a financial engine for other ministries. But the reality is they have employees, customers, vendors, suppliers, competitors, and the community all inside of what I call their missional footprint. And so trying to help business leaders think about taking all those skills you have and applying those things to this huge footprint of people that you're marketing to, right? That you're employing, spending money on. And how do we turn that into your primary ministry rather than thinking about this separated, bifurcated life?
I love it. So marketplace ministry. That's what I'm about.
It is.
Okay. That's what we do. That's where I'm called. I've done the in-church ministry. It's not for me. Okay. I don't operate in that incredibly subjective arena. Okay. It just, at least my way, it didn't work. I did it for a few years, number of years, different things. And I realized like we all have strengths and gifts, right? And mine really is in the marketplace. You know, it's how I operate. It's how I have a kingdom focused business, right? And people see that and they get that. And there's a lot of opportunity to witness for the gospel in and throughout your business. And I love that this is what you guys do. And it's you're so right, John, because we get doing this business thing. Okay. And we go in with a very secular mindset, don't we? Like we go in, we're going to make money. We're going to do this. We're going to pay taxes. We're going to do this. And I can give to the church. I'm going to tithe. I'm going to do some offerings, you know, and stuff like that. And you realize, and your church doesn't know what you do. They have no idea. He's just a business owner. Like you said, they don't even know what all that entails. And that's okay. That's not their fault or anything like that, right? Because we're a unique breed. We're the risk-taking, you know, hard-charging guys. We're a very small percentage of people who do the entrepreneur thing. But it really is learning how to leverage that in a marketplace, right?
Richard, I did 3 years in seminary. I had 0 class sessions on how to run a board meeting, how to manage church finances, how to get volunteers. Like I did lots of classes on ancient doctrine, history, stuff like that. But like all of the administrative stuff that as business people we know has got to be dialed, not 1 hour in 3 years of seminary.
You know, it's funny. Our pastor was a big business guy. Okay. I mean, he took Gander Mountain from like catalog to retail, works for Target, like big guy. Then he became a pastor like 14 years ago, maybe 13, 14 years ago, you know, got saved in like 96 and kind of did the whole thing, but left that business. But he started as the business guy for the church. He handled that stuff. Right. So it was kind of cool taking those strengths that he had. And now he's just preaching the word, man. It's amazing. Like his whole mindset it's really unique. Right. But you seldom get that. Right. And he, you know, he's typical story, never wanted to be a pastor, never thought he'd ever be one. And boom, here he is, you know, and he runs an awesome church and knows how to delegate, put the right people in place. Really, because he ran 700, 800 people at a time. Right. So they get it. And that is when you see that running and you're still just, for us, they just focus on the word of God and still have everything run smooth. You know, it's pretty awesome.
Well, you just talked about talent selection. You didn't use those words, but that's right. What you were describing, right? Is managing people, selecting talent, coaching people up and all that. And I don't care what kind of organization you're in, if it's a small nonprofit giving shoes away to a soup kitchen, to running a huge Fortune 500 company. Every organization has to have a revenue model. In business, we call it sales and marketing. You have to have financial management. You got to pay the bills. You got to make sure you don't spend more than you make, all that kind of stuff. You got to have a people strategy, and you've got to have operational excellence. And then the fifth piece that we add in C12 is having a ministry focus, that business as a ministry. So I don't care what organization you're running, you've probably got a revenue goal, right? I mean, if you got any goals at all, you're going to have a revenue goal because everybody can get their arms around that. But gosh, how do I think about running this business as a ministry? And how would Jesus treat people if he was in my place? And really, those are the questions that we wrestle with all the time.
Yeah, it's so true. I get approached from nonprofits, and I said, well, that's just a tax status. I said, that's all that it's not like hang out and, do nothing. It's like you got to build this. You have to build it like a business to do all this, make this, accomplish all this. Again, it's just a tax status. But so many people, John, have this nonprofit thing in their head, like there's no business sense at all.
Nonprofit almost means like non-accountable.
That's it. I'm glad you said that. I didn't have to.
Well, I tell you, let me see, maybe 2 years ago, I was just talking to my wife, and she does all of our household accounting and all that kind of stuff. And I said, could I just have a report for like the last 3 years of where did we give money? We pay our tithe to our church. We think that's clear and a clear commandment. So we do that. We don't ask questions, but then of course we give above and beyond. And I just looked at it, and it was this list as long as my arm. And I said, gosh, are there some common categories here? And what I realized was my giving strategy was whoever asked persuasively most recently. It's like, well,
the
okay.
Best salesman.
Yeah. And maybe I could be a little more strategic than that. Right. And so we did some work together, my wife and me, thinking about our giving strategy. What are the categories we want to affect and things like that. And so I shared this with my C12 group, and one of the business owners in one of the groups said, well, John, you're a very disciplined investor. You track your return on investment, your key performance indicators. How do you assess the effectiveness of the nonprofits that you give money to? And I was gobsmacked because I didn't have an answer. So I started calling executive directors of all the places that we were giving money to and asking them, how do you track your effectiveness? What are your KPIs? The answers were bad. They had no idea what I was talking about, or they were tracking things like social media posts and stuff. I'm like, well, I'm not giving you money to go on Facebook.
Well, the saying is, I can't deposit likes in the bank.
Yeah.
Okay? Like that, there's no currency value to those. Okay. We got to talk about that.
So just this morning, I had breakfast with a guy who runs this nonprofit that it's a youth development organization, and they use bikes. I'm a cyclist. And so he's like, surely John's going to give me some money, and I asked him the question, how do you measure your effectiveness? You're a youth development organization. And his face just fell. And he's like, I know that we need to do that, but, and so I really care about the people. I know a lot of people in the organization and all that. And so I said, okay, you know what? How about I come to your next couple of board meetings, and we're going to spend some time thinking about looking at the mission and the mission, vision, values of the organization. And then we're going to do some brainstorming, and brain writing is the tool I use to figure out what are one or two measurable outcomes that we want to, what are the levers that we can pull, and what are the things that we think we should make a difference. And, if assuming they engage with that, they ask me, they put it on their schedule, put it on my schedule, then I'd be able to invest in them. But if it's not trackable or measurable, it's just not investable.
Yeah, I love it. I mean, it's so important to understand that. I had a woman contact me, and this was a good thing. Okay. So she contacts me regarding business coaching, and she says, listen, and she's speaking, and she's got an incredible story and overcome all this stuff. It's really good. She goes, well, someone's offered me $2 million to start a nonprofit to do what I'm doing. And she says, but I don't know anything about business. So she came to me like, I need to know I can't take this person's money.
Good for her.
When I don't know. And I'm like, dude, whether you go, Mira, you are on the right track. and you stay on that track and you get that dialed in before you ever touch that money. And you tell them what you're doing, like you hold on to that. Okay, I'm interested, but I got to get some ducks in a row first so that this can be an effective ministry. When you get an infusion like that, that's another level of stewardship.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So you really got to have this. So I love that you reached out. I'm sure she's got stuff together. But that's kind of the mindset we need to have, right? At any level, it doesn't matter. I see some people will start their nonprofit, again, no real business experience, but they also don't have the funds, and and kind of take it as like a bivocational. They're doing stuff, but they got 3 or 4 kids and they got this, and they can't really run this nonprofit. It's hand and mouth, and I get it, but it's like, well, you can probably explain this better than I can, but I'm just saying that there didn't seem to be enough planning before you launch.
Right.
Again, their ducks weren't in a row. How are we going to finance this thing? And what I find a lot, John, is everybody's asking for too little. They're starting with like nothing, thinking that's a good thing. They're asking people for a little bit of money. With this one individual, someone, listen, people with big money, they do big things. Giving you 10 grand is not a big thing. Okay. They're going to be like, what's that going to do? Because they know, because they do big things.
Right.
Like, so they're not, that's like throwing it away in their mind. Right. It's like, well, but ask me for 300 large. Okay. Well, maybe you can do something with that. You know what I mean? Like, and I may be off base on this, but it seems to me with my experience and everything else that you're going to do big things. You need big helpers.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Or why do it as a nonprofit? If you're giving value, maybe you should be creating value and receiving value in return. That's why I'm so excited about business as ministry rather than nonprofit and hope people give you money.
Yeah. Who, other than a politician, wants to be in constant fundraising mode?
Good.
They're the only ones who want to do that.
I don't know
their whole
even
career doing that. Maybe they don't want to, but they have to.
Yeah.
Right? And that's I'd rather give to a nonprofit. It's kind of the same thing, but they're not doing anything. But yeah, it's really important. I love, because my whole thing and the connections I have are all about the business as a marketplace. We really have that feeling that the next big move of God is in the marketplace.
Billy Graham said that.
Exactly. Yeah. And where else can we have the influence? Okay. So I had a pastor at church ask me, he's always talking about witnessing and doing all this stuff, and you talk to people, all this stuff. I'm like, well, yeah, like last week I hit about 23,000 people. How'd you do? Because I'm on a podcast. So I'm like, I had 27.5 thousand people listen last night. How'd you do? I'm like, you're measuring wrong. Okay. Like I've been on, hundreds of these things. I've done hundreds of thousands of whatever, so it's just, it gives us so many options, right? When you're in the marketplace, when you're a business owner, way more options than just the average person, right?
Well, it sounds like we're beating up on churches, man.
It does, and I'm not. Yeah, please forgive me. I'm not. I'm totally not doing that. Love mine, man. I'm not doing that. I just give me a little virtual slap there. John,
okay. You and me both, right? We're both doing it. But let's just think about this. Churches are begging people to come and then asking them for money. As a business owner, I'm selecting who gets to come and I'm paying them when they show up. I mean, it's the exact opposite model.
Love it.
Holy cow. Wow. I'm paying people to come. Yeah, I expect them to do some stuff, but geez, we're pouring into these people, and churches pour into people too and provide all kinds of other benefits and things like that. But I just think we need to recognize the real richness and value of entrepreneurship, running businesses, and caring for people in the way that, with all the dignity and everything that a job provides.
Yeah, I think basically what you're saying is the church really needs to leverage business owners better. They're not leveraging us. You can't just ask for the tithe and that. It's like, well, what are you actually doing? Who are you? Okay, well, what kind of people do you hire and everything else? It could be a job placement place.
Right.
Like I know someone, she's out of work now. Yeah, well, I got a place for her. Could be the best job of their life.
Yeah.
Right. Because now you're with like-minded. right? I run a kingdom-based business. I mean, I have a declaration on my strategic vision, like this is who we are, what we do. So, if you don't like it, you probably don't want to come here. If this doesn't resonate with you, you don't want to go. But if it does, hey, let's talk, So I like it.
Well, one of the most powerful recent stories I've heard from a C12 member is a guy named Josh who runs an electric company in Alabama called Able Electric. And his story starts out where, this is on YouTube. You could go to C12 Group on YouTube and find this. But the story starts with him at 18, coming from a really rough family, becoming a bouncer at a bar, and then within 3 months, he's a full-time drug dealer. Within 3 years, he's got 18 felonies. But as he was getting near the end of his term, he was eligible for a work release thing. And there was a little Bible study from a church that came in, and one of the guys that came in to do the prison Bible study ran a residential electric company. And Josh said, "Hey, could I come work for you? I'm eligible for this work release." Yeah, he did. He learned the trade. He got out, became a master electrician, and started running a business and hiring people. And he noticed that people who were interested in working for him, but more than 70% of them were previously incarcerated or on a substance abuse recovery journey, or both, often case, right? And he's like, "Man, look at all these people are coming here." And just to fast forward to the present day, he's got over 120 people working for him. He's got a house where guys coming out of the joint can live. They run a discipleship program. They're running worship services in their electric warehouse, baptizing dozens of people every year, and they've got a job. I mean, that's the package right there.
I'm telling you, there's a lot more businesses doing that kind of stuff than you'd imagine. Because we don't think of it, well, they don't use it enough, but I'm telling you, because I have clients and their whole focus is that.
Yeah.
They want that. Hey, they give them prayer time during the job time. You know what I mean? Here's a room you can go. You get 20 minutes. Like they build this into the culture of the business. And there's a lot more businesses out there than you'd think, than the average person would think, doing stuff like this, because there's a big thing that we do. And it's, yes, we all want more competent people, but we really want to make them better as people. That's our goal. So at STS, I want to help 10,000 business owners create profit, freedom, and impact. But how you do that is, again, give them the place, make them competent, let them get quality pay, right? Work for purpose, but also make them better as people. Because where do they go with that? They go home to their families. Their families are then in the communities. Now you're not affecting 10,000 people. I'm affecting millions. Right? Because of that process. You know what I mean? You have to have that mindset. And I'm not a touchy-feely guy at all. And those put a spears on my wall. I'm not really.
You touch them with a spear.
That's right. That's why I say sharpen the spears. But it really is. But I get what that is. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be it's not some pie in the sky thing. It's legit. There's points, there's things you achieve and do that help increase these things, right? So that we can better our communities and everything else, because the influence, I don't care if you have 3 or 5 people working for you or 50 or 500. Okay. You have influence in the community. Okay. Because you do what most will not. Start a business, invest in it, reinvest in it, hire people, deliver products or services. You're doing all that kind of stuff, right? That's always a challenge every day, but you're employing people and people respect that. So when you start at a place of respect, right, that's influence. Okay. Because now when you speak, they're going to listen, right? Maybe you have an idea. Maybe it doesn't mean, hey, I just give money. Like I go work with my hands. That's given the time to people is more valuable than money. Right? That time means more. And when you've got a well-run business, you've got time, right? Which most people don't have time. They don't have money or time, but we want to have that profit so that we're able to have the freedom and the time to go do that kind of stuff and make a difference out in the community with our business.
Love it. Yeah, that's it, man. Adding value to people. Jesus said, give and it shall be given to you. So the value creation cycle starts with giving. But then how does the rest of the verse, Luke 6:38, finish up? Shall men put into your bosom, pressed down, shaken together, overflowing, right? This is amazing. We start this value wheel with giving, providing value. And then the way God built the world, man, you give value and you're going to get more back.
That's why he likes a cheerful giver.
Amen.
And you should be cheerful if you know the real cycle, like you just described, right? I don't mean you're giving to get. I'm a big proponent of the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing. I give and stuff like that, but I'm not there. Hey, you know what? If I give 500, I bet I get 1,500 back.
Yeah.
God will take care of me. I don't think that way. I mean, some people may, but I give to give, right? With no expectation, but we are blessed that way. I've seen it with countless people, right? And I love it. And again, from a business standpoint, it's that ability to do what others can't because you've put in that time, right?
Well, and when I say giving, I mean even like giving a valuable service. Say you run a septic pumping company, right? Well, you're giving people a clean flush. You're giving them peace of mind, or you're doing something for them that they couldn't. Sure, they pay you, but you are providing a valuable service, which starts the value creation cycle.
Right. So I want to ask you this because I'm going to share one of my Christian pet peeves. Okay. So you're in a business. Okay. So we're business owners, right? We all start business. We work hard. We do our whole thing. And then you're in the church. You got your brothers and sisters in Christ. We're all there. They want me to come out and do whatever I do. Okay. Well, I had a roofing company, whatever. And then they want, right off the cuff, they want the Christian discount. Okay. They had this expectation of you're going to cut them a deal. Okay. So I'm always like, well, that's not very Christian. Okay. I'm a guy with a business. I have 6 children to feed. And just because you go to church with me, like you deserve a discount. I deliver the highest value, and that's another thing. So here's my thing. And I kind of preach this a bit to both members of the church and the congregation and the contractors. So we'll do contractors and members, right? Christian, both are Christian. So I said, as a member, you shouldn't have an expectation of a discount. This man works hard, has to feed his family, got to pay his guys, has to do all this stuff. His pricing is fair. People pay him this amount and they get amazing value. They deliver all that, right? So you shouldn't have that expectation. Now, on the other side, in the contractor, you better be delivering way more value than they're paying for. Okay, this is a two-way street here. Okay, so you're above and beyond every job, just like you would a regular customer. No different here, do the same thing. And then I tell the members, I said, but at the end of the job, if Richard, the contractor, decides, you know what, man, you were just a great customer overall, man. I love you. We go to church together, but I'm going to knock 10% off. And I decided that, right? I'm the contractor. I decided to give it to you when we got done because you were, a great cut, whatever. And we need to be okay with that. I just think I see it. You probably see it a lot too. You get out there a lot. It's this assumption of like, well, why do you think you rate that? It's not even biblical. I mean, think about that. I'm just getting this off. I'm just throwing this out there, John, so you know where I'm at, because I talk about this often because I see it all the time. I work with trades guys. That's who I coach and everything else. We see it a lot, so we've had to learn a new language, how to get around that. So I taught them the right things to say and stuff like that, just to get it back. Okay. Oh, okay. Oh, you're right. Never thought of it that way. I get it. No, most people don't. It's okay. But you're going to pay. You're going to pay.
In Proverbs, there's a proverb that says, curse him who withholds grain, but his blessing is on the head of him who sells it. Now, so I'm all about, voluntary free exchange and all that. At the same time, as a person, I need to do something for free every week to keep my heart pure. I need to give stuff away. I need to give time away, all that kind of stuff. But I'm 100% with you that we should not be expecting people. Most people don't even understand a margin. There's some businesses don't even run a 10% margin. So it's costing them to give you a service at a 10% discount. I mean, maybe just ask them for $500 and then use it towards the next deal,
Yeah, it is that, I do a whole thing on discounting and everything else and what it takes. Once you discount, it's like you got to do double the business just to get back to the original margin. And no one only discounts 10%.
Right.
And I was telling them, I go, and you do realize that until it hits 40% discount, it doesn't change their buying decision. So that's you're just giving money away. and making yourself work twice as much.
This is so interesting. Pricing, I find pricing and hiring to be like the two hardest things for people to get a hold of, business leaders to get a hold of. And there's a great example after the Great Recession, 2008, 9, 10. Quiznos and Subway, basically in the same business, right? They're selling sandwiches. They both saw customer behavior change. People felt like they couldn't afford to go to the restaurant as often. And so Quiznos lowered prices. Subway kept their prices the same, but introduced a value menu with different items. I don't know. Instead of Italian sub, it was a Sicilian sub, and it was $1 cheaper or something like that. I don't know, whatever it was. When the customer behavior changed and people's perception that went back up, that they could afford the restaurant, Quiznos tried to raise prices and people get mad. Subway just took away the value menu. And so the Italian sub was the same price it's always been. Now, brilliant.
Yeah, I have a little different take on the same
Okay,
scenario.
let me hear it.
Okay. Do you know what really took Quiznos out?
Tell me.
Okay, what was their slogan? Toasty, right?
So I don't go to sandwich shops. I don't.
Okay,
I don't know.
but that was their logo.
Okay.
Toasty. They toasted subs, right? And they were amazing. You know what? I'll tell you why they lost. Like, that's part of it. But it really is, you know what Subway said? Oh, we'll get a toaster. They started toasting their subs. They never did that until Quiznos came along. They smoked them. They smoked Quiznos out because they got a toaster. Now you could go get a toasted sub. Like you said, they removed the value thing, had that, but they also toast it. So they don't need Quiznos anymore. They don't need the price, and they didn't need the toaster. They literally got beat by a toaster. That's my business analysis. Okay.
Better pricing and
warmer subs,
match the service or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really, we talk about that a lot. But it's true, right? There's a lot of these little things, whether in business and they cross over into how we treat people. So it's really interesting when we look at, even from a biblical aspect, this Christian worldview, this how we treat our people, how we treat our customers, how we speak to them, how we serve them. All that stuff should be at a really, really high level, right? The more we work with the business, the more you see how poor people's customer service is. Their communication is horrible, right? I do this every day. I work with these. It's like, oh my gosh, like, you can talk to people like that, like it's like, and they still come back. I mean, this is an odd thing. We gotta wonder who your ideal client is here, but they like abuse. But you look at this stuff and you go, wow, because I always talk about, these biblical principles work whether you're a believer or not, and go ahead and use them. It's going to work for you. If you use these principles, you'll see a difference in your business, right? So when we talk about marketplace ministry, for me, that's one of the simple things I can do. I don't have to tell them it's a biblical principle. I just give them this new principle. I'm air quoting new, right? They roll it out. It works so good. I go, oh, that's cool. Yeah. It's been around for a little while. Really? Where'd you learn it? The Bible. I go, yeah, there's lots of those in there. You should check it out. There's me witnessing. Okay. So, but it opens the door for the conversation, right? But they work. They work every time, all the time, when they're done right.
Well, that's beautiful. Yeah, that's one of my things that I've said it earlier in this conversation is I care about what works. And you're exactly right. If we're generous, then we're going to receive. If we provide value, we're going to receive value. If we seek to get from people, that means that we're just completely selfish and disconnected.
Well, and people are going to take from you.
Oh, yeah.
That's what that means. So
sure.
You're always going to be that guy, the guy who's always thinking people are going to rip him off. Okay, let's. Why do you think that way? Who do you rip off?
Yeah.
Okay, like there's some personal experience going on in there. So, you gotta look at things that way.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's great though. But I love it. I love the concepts that, and I think, John, a lot of people in business don't reflect enough on these concepts, if you will, these principles and stuff, and really work on the practical application of this stuff. That's what I see a lot, because like I said earlier about the secular view of business. I mean, my own brother would tell me that everyone owns a business is a criminal. So I'm like,
well, half the politicians say that, right? Why is there inflation? Because greedy business people are ripping us off.
Yeah, there's the kid who'll call him the pot black. Kidding. So it's like, again, they know. Okay, they know corruption. Okay, but yeah, it is that. But there is. I mean, come on. There's businesses. There's people who do We live in a fallen world, right? That's what you're going to get. And if you don't expect that, well, you're a little blind, right? There has to be an anticipation of this kind of thing so you can choose who you actually do business with. That's the good thing, at least here, right? We have options to understand who we're actually doing business with. So that's another thing, another layer that you add to your business. Doesn't mean you've got, you're preaching from a soapbox outside your business and everything else, but it's how we conduct ourselves. I call it subtle witnessing. Okay. It's how I walk. It's what I do every day, both public and private. I'm the same person. You have to be that. And then people see that. You don't have to be saint. People get it. They feel that spirit, and eventually they'll ask a question or they'll just thoroughly enjoy doing business with you all the time. So you kind of win on both fronts.
Richard, I think one of the advantages to being a Christian is that if we are conscious that we have a connection to the God of the universe, the source of everything that's good, then I don't have to worry about, trying to get every last nickel out of you or squeezing you. But when I'm disconnected from God, and if I feel like it's all on my shoulders, I've got to get mine. I got to fight and scrap and win. Then what happens is instead of seeing you as a person, I see you as an object. You are either a tool to get what I want, or you're an obstacle in my way. I found myself thinking this way, standing in line at a coffee shop one day. I wanted my coffee. Now, look, I was under caffeinated to, as a mitigating factor here, obviously. But I go to a coffee shop and I get black coffee. It's fast. You don't have to wait around. You don't have to explain it.
This is why we're still aligned, John. We're exactly aligned. Again, it's a split in the screen, but we're really the same.
All right, cool. You've got better hair, but besides that. So I'm standing in line and there's people in front of me ordering these complex drinks and they didn't quite know what they wanted. And what is that called again? And I'm like, give me my black coffee, man. And I realized in that instant, the people in line I was seeing as obstacles to my coffee. And then the baristas, the people making the coffee, I was seeing them as tools to get what I wanted, my black coffee. And I'm like, wow, I am operating not out of a sense of abundance, but out of a sense of, independence. And I've got to fight and scrap for my own. And so I realized that, man, my thinking is really messed up here. And so I'm like, I've got to replace bad thinking with something positive. Paul told us if there's anything true, honorable, worthy, think on these things. And so I'm like, okay, I've got to have a quick default. When I recognize my bad thinking, stinking thinking, Zig Ziglar used to call it, what do I start to think on instead? And so I memorized the 23rd Psalm. And so if I find myself getting anxious about somebody in traffic or, slow ordering their coffee, it's like, okay, that's bad thinking. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not. So whether you quote scripture or something else, I encourage everybody to have a positive default they can go to, changing your default settings so that when you get triggered, whatever it is, you've got something good to go to.
I had that this morning. I'm coming out of the gym. I come downstairs and there's a guy working the desk. His name's Fred, and it's pouring out. Downpour, right? It's been raining. I go, Fred, you know what the good news is today? And he goes, what's that? I go, I don't have to water the garden.
Nice.
He's just like, I'm going out, walking out in the rain. I'm the same way. Like, got to put the positive spin on some things, like
for
that.
sure.
But you're exactly right. The other solution was in Chicago, they had a drip only line. You could bypass all them and just like a tapper and fill your own and pay right there. So someone solved that problem a long time ago, John. They just didn't pass it on to everybody else. But yeah, now I just make my own and I just don't have to wait in line. But yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that replacement of thought is, we're renewing our mind daily, right? So it's Romans. That's what it is, right? Renew your mind daily. And that's one of the processes. We have to do it every day because we're never going to be at the perfect place, So this is one of our challenges. And again, going back to being a business owner, like you have things to accomplish. You have pressures, you have targets, you have all this stuff you're trying to do and this influence and make an impact. And creating profit or losing money or whatever's going on, and you have to renew your mind. Okay. So that stuff. So, we got the deck's a little stacked against us as business owners, but I like it that way. I like the challenge, right? Okay, well, we're made for this. I'm built for a time such as this. Here I am. I can do this. This is why I'm here, so I can do it. So I love that.
People who solve bigger problems get bigger rewards. So there you go.
That's it. I love solving problems.
Yeah.
I never realized that till a couple of years ago, even though I've been coaching for quite a while and training people and doing all kinds of stuff. But I'm like the problem solver, man. That's what I do. People just get on the phone and I'm just bam, bam, bam. I was just going, they say, well, now what did you say before I go? I don't know, man. It's like impromptu on the piano.
Record it, man.
Then it's gone. It's there and then it's gone. Don't ask me twice. This stuff it's just all inspired. It's just, that's how it is, So I don't know. Maybe catch me again another time. I'll remember what I said, but I don't know right now. So yeah, but I love it. I love that aspect of it. That's one of the things I love about entrepreneurship and business ownership is that ability to have that constant change. When I was building custom water features, my first business, I loved it because I was always at a new job site. I was always building something unique. I realized that's part of who I couldn't do the same thing, twice, never. So I wouldn't build anyone. No one had, everything was different, to the point, John, you'll appreciate this. Back in 2005, maybe 4, I had a website, websites are still kind of new. But e-commerce websites were really I dropped $41,000 on an e-commerce website to sell these custom benches I had made. I want to make them for people. And this thing was up for a week. And I went, wait, I don't make 2 of anything. I'm not doing that. Shut this thing down. I shut the website down, just flushed that 41,000. My wife about killed me. It was unbelievable. But I'm like, I can't do that. I don't do 2 of anything, So I realized that whole ability to solve new problems and do that. That became a replacement for the physical things I used to build. Now when I coach, I help with that because I love just, what do you got?
That was some expensive self-awareness, man.
Yeah, I operated at a very high level of stupid. Okay, back then. That was only one incident, John. You know the old saying, if I only had what I lost, I would be good. Okay, but those are when things are good, they're good, and when they're not, well, they're not. And I got to experience both. So all part of the game, though, right? It's all part of what we do. Yeah. So tell us a little bit more, going forward, what's your particular, do you have an overall vision for what you're doing? Can you paint that for us?
Yeah.
What outcomes you looking for? That kind of thing.
Sure. So my wife and I are near the end of our intense parenting season. So my youngest kid will be a senior in the next school year.
I got that too.
Yeah. He's committed to go into a Bible college here in next summer. And so we have decided this is an opportunity for us to work together. So primarily she's been running the household and I've been interacting with the world, getting resources, right? Sort of division of labor. But together we're building a business called Abundant Thought Revolution. Abundant Thought Revolution. And it's really aimed at helping people think better every day, renewing our minds daily, just like you said. And so our first product, if you will, is a book that I've got coming out called Thinking for Success. And it's 52 stories with a little application. So 52, you can use one a week in a staff meeting, right? Or a team meeting or a small group or however you want to use it. And then we've got insights we put on our website, and we've got courses. How do you run a family board? So we've done that together and brought our adult kids into our own wealth management and philanthropic processes. And so we're just deeply focused on helping everybody that we interact with think better, because all of our outcomes are rooted in our behaviors, which start with our thinking. And Jesus, his whole mission statement was repent, or the Greek word metanoia, change your thinking. And that's where change starts, is in our thinking.
Right. So true. Now, one more alignment question I didn't hear yet. Did you homeschool your children?
Not much. We had a
Okay.
couple little spasms of homeschooling, but they've all gone to. We had 4 kids in 4 different private school districts at one time, just because
Wow.
everybody needed something different or whatever. One graduated from a public high school, but went through a Christian school up until 8th grade or so. But everybody else has gone to private Christian schools.
Well, we had 6 at the dining room table.
Glory.
The Walsh Academy. It was amazing.
Wow.
And they all made it. So all the way through, we did it. So it's pretty cool.
That's amazing.
One of my sons is in the Marines, like I said, and then the other 2, yeah, it's been really good. I loved it. I'm not saying right or wrong with anyone else, but that for us was, we wanted to do that before we even had children. That was like the plan.
Wow.
I'm like, listen, we get come ready. When we have kids, we're going to homeschool them. Like that. And my wife's like, I'm into that. So she's amazing. Okay. I always got to throw this caveat. I taught art and PE. She
Nice.
did all the hard stuff. But yeah, we homeschooled them. Okay. But, and I taught them how to box and how to shoot and all the other fun things. But it's what a great experience it was really for us. I mean, really, raised pretty cool kids, good heads on their shoulder, good critical thinkers, so just those things. And they understand business. The cool thing about that, when I owned a gym too, and like I remember my daughter would sit with me while I'm doing membership, bringing people in, I'm training, my kids kind of see all that. They've kind of really got to grow up around the entrepreneurial world. Not that they're going to be entrepreneurs per se, right? They can do whatever they want, but they've had the good exposure to it, which is all I wanted to do.
They know it's an option, which
Exactly.
a lot of kids don't.
And it may be later because I don't let them be an entrepreneur. They have to go work crappy jobs. You got to go to Culver's and experience that. You got to go do that. You need to see how businesses are run, good and bad, maybe, and get it, and then put that time in. You need to be that, that servant, if you will, right? You got to be the person, you got to be the employee, and then come out of there so you have that concept. You understand it. You know what you like, what you didn't like, but you see different things in different businesses. And I think it was really helpful for them that way as well, because then they can make more an educated decision when the time comes.
Richard, you're pointing to my next project. Like, I haven't even released this book, but I've already started a file on the next one. And you've seen a million leadership books, and there's hundreds of conferences on leadership and millions of podcasts on leadership, but 0 on followership. And the reality is we all are following at some point. We might be a leader over here, but we're following over here. We don't lead every single thing. And so I've just been studying on followership, and I'm calling it leaders who follow, because my assumption is you're leading something, if even just yourself. But how do we do a good job? And what is the role of a successful follower? And I don't hear many people talking about it.
I introduce myself as a Christ follower.
There you go.
Not a Christian. I don't even use the Christian word anymore. I'm a Christ follower, because it's been kind of tainted. But you're right. I can't wait. That's a great book, John. That's going to be awesome. That really is. That's a great viewpoint, and you'll be, oh man, I'm already thinking of stuff you could add to that. I mean, you could load that thing. That thing could be loaded with new thought processes. You know what I mean? Just that, because you're right, that renewing the mind, that changing the way you think. And there's a million different techniques. Like you said, the leadership thing, again, being a podcast host. Okay. And I guess there's a million leadership guys. Everyone's talking about leadership. And you know what I figured out, John? You know why? Because all they got to do is talk about it. They don't have to do anything. I'm like, you're AT, baby. You're all talk. Okay. So I'm like, no more leadership people. Come on my podcast. Okay. You're just a bunch of talkers. And I've had some really, really good ones with the real experience. And I mean, legit, really good stuff. But I'm seeing an abundance, like you said. It's like out of control, which only tells me, because I'm a born contrarian, okay, there's something wrong. There's way too many people talking about leadership. All these leadership, because I look at, and I'll go this way, I look at America, we got the biggest plague is fatherlessness. Speaking of leaders.
Right.
Son in the home. Okay, but everyone's out there teaching how to be a leader, but no one's doing it at home. So it's like we look at what we're producing, and our kids and everything else, what's coming out. I'm like, there's no leadership out there. You're all experts. What are you doing? That's why I'm wondering. I'm like, what's all this stuff? Oh, how to lead this little group at this place or lead this kind of person. It's just, I get a little jaded, but I look for the fruit. I'm not seeing a lot of leadership fruit out there.
Well, just to tie two things together that we've talked about in this conversation, So my older son is 22. He's got a general contractor's license. He's
Nice.
starting to do some work, and he's actually asking if we as a family will run the business together with him. And I love this idea because I've already brought my kids into a shared governance process. Look at this. What do we got? What do we got?
He needs my book. He needs my book.
All right, we'll get
The
it.
Contractor's New Way to Scale, Regain Control, and Fast Track Growth While Loving Life. I'll send it to him. Does he like audiobooks? I'll give him the free audio version.
He's probably an audio guy. Yeah.
I'll send it to you when we get done with this.
Contractors, they're doing and not sitting down reading. So
I love it.
But what if we had a construction business where one of our KPIs is % of the kids living with their dad? Or something around that, because that fatherlessness piece it's critical. It's critical to the future of our culture, man. And could a business see that as one of the outcomes of a great company culture is that dads want to live with their kids? I'm just kicking that around right now.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I'm telling you, I got the privilege to do a podcast with my son. He was home in January. We were on a podcast together, and they interviewed basically him. Okay, I'd been on her podcast, but to listen to him, like, I'm just like, the way he talked about being brought up and things he did, how he approaches this and discipline. I'm like, dude, you are like, I wasn't even close to that at 20 years old. And I was in the Marine Corps at the same time. I'm like, man, I couldn't believe the stuff how he thought of everything. He's a forward thinker. Because I would tell people, I'm like, well, I did really great things, but I did them to do the thing. He doesn't do them to do the thing. He does, like he said, well, because I want to be able to protect my family with both my hands and a weapon. So he's not married, doesn't have a girlfriend, and he's thinking he's going to be in there for 6 years. Like, he's thinking ahead in everything.
Yeah.
All the discipline, everything is he is the master of delayed gratification. Like, it's just impressive. And I'm listening to this whole podcast. I'm like, dang, I did okay as a dad. So we did all this stuff, but you get that, and you see it. Sometimes you get to have those little windows where you see that stuff and go, this is why. It's not why I stay around, but it's like, this is the importance of a father. I'm not perfect, and he's not, but all the kids, we see that impact, and then we see the impact without it, right? Like, maybe it's their friends or other things, and you realize, I call it a plague, because it is. That's what it is in this country, that fatherlessness, that no responsibility, that, the worship of the single mother. They introduce themselves as single mothers like it's a badge of honor, and people can hate me and everything, but I'm just saying, like, that's misguided. It's become your identity. There's a problem with that too. My work, my job, my original career was my identity. I didn't even know the Lord at that time, but eventually I'm like, I'm not going to let this own me anymore. Now my identity is in Christ. My son was a really talented runner, and he lost this race once. I'll just share this with you. They're just battling out with elbows coming to the chute, right? And they get in, he loses by that, half a step or whatever. He goes into this funk for days. Like, wouldn't talk, wouldn't come. So my wife and I sat down with him. I'm like, he's like, well, I'm the best runner, and everyone expected me to win, and it's all about me. I gotta be this. I gotta run. I go, oh, hold on. I gave him the identity speech. I said, listen, I can give you a stack of books from here to the ceiling on great athletes, and it was over in a snap. Busted knee, back, whatever, over. I said, that's not who you are. Your identity is in Christ. That's who's never going to leave or forsake you. That never changes. All this stuff, this is fun. This is, you're gifted. Use the gift while it lasts. When it's gone, it's gone. If that's the case, right? So that completely changed him. And then a couple of years later, I hear him telling a friend of his the same thing, because this kid's torn between being a great wrestler and one on the run. He's like, I'm like, dang, that's cool. But see, people don't get the influence of parents, not just dad or mom, but both of us have this unbelievable influence on our children to shape their character, to direct them, to create the path they're going to go, and then train them up. Right? We got to train them up in the way they should go, and they won't depart from me when they're old. That's the goal. And like, I got to see that. That's all I'm saying. It's like, it's so cool to see it being transferred even to a friend. Really cool.
That's so neat, man. That's awesome. Well, we were talking about fatherlessness, right? And
Right.
the impact of dads in a home and all that.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one quick story. My son was in high school and he was doing career voc ed, for construction. He wasn't a college guy for basically his whole life. And anyways, he told the story of one of the other kids in his construction class who said, "Man, our teacher's rich." Like a school teacher is rich. Yeah. And my son knows Rich, he's like, right. Why, huh? What's up? He has 3/4 of a tank of gas. This kid had never seen a full gas tank. And I'm like, well, he isn't rich, but he has a job, which is a whole lot closer than your family is showing you, right? I mean, come on. Where's the dad with a job in this house where they can fill up a gas tank?
Right. I remember when I was young, it was one of my goals, speaking of gas, was to be able to fill the truck, fill it all the way up without thinking about it. Yeah. Just, put the click there, hold it, walk away, and not worry about, I got to stop at $5.50 or whatever.
Right. Yeah. How many cans I can take back?
That was one of my goals. Like, I want to be able to do that at will. Okay. And it's like, it's little things like that, but you just proved the point. Here's a kid who's just like, dang, you could do that. But think his whole life, he's in high school. 14, 15 years, you've been hearing how much gas costs. I went across the street because it's a penny cheaper, and all this stuff, and you can't fill it all the way up. And I got to put $5 in real quick so I can get to the, 4 miles down the road. I mean, I'm not beating those people up, but when you're surrounded by that poverty consciousness, that affects you for a long time until you talked about your headspace and the way you think and the thought that's a lot of work to turn that kind of mindset around.
Oh man, it sure is.
Because that's all those formative years. I grew up that way. We didn't have anything. It was always nothing, and I got in, got out, and just, it took a long time to really get into it. My dad would even ask me, like, I've been doing these amazing water fees. He's like, they pay you that much? I'm like, well, yeah, Dad, they can't do what I do. And he's like, I go, you could do this. So you don't have the value that they do. They could buy all my equipment with the stroke of a check. Okay. But they can't operate it. They can't build what I build, so I had to, that took a while for me to get that whole thing, what my real value is. Yeah. What am I truly bringing these people? It's not just the ability to do it. It's the outcome that I create when I'm done. The tranquility and the sound and the beauty of it, and all this stuff. That's not just, it's hard to put a price on that. And I'll tell you, John, not one customer ever, 20 years of doing this stuff, ever give me a last check or whatever it was, said that they paid too much. It was all, man, you do not charge enough. And John, I was charging a lot.
Good for you.
I mean, so it was really good, but that was like my thing. I always loved that compliment. It's like, well, I'm
and you weren't selling rocks and water pumps, man. You were selling peace and tranquility and a retreat and a time with my spouse and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it was nothing to do with materials.
Right.
It's outcome. Everything's outcome based, man. I'm going to make your life better. And people love it. They send me Christmas cards and what, you know what I mean? It's like the greatest thing that ever happened to me was this thing. Because when I get done, it looks like it was there before the house. That's how natural it was, so, but yeah, really great stuff, John. This has been just awesome. Give us the book. Now, is your book out?
It will be out at the end of the year, but you can go to our website and I'll give you a free chapter and then a link to a video on how to use it in your next meeting. So cool. I'll give you a free chapter. You could use it tomorrow, watch a 90-second video. You'll know exactly how to do it. Start a great conversation. So that's at abundantthoughtrevolution.com.
Perfect. Okay. Anything else for them to follow you? A website just there? Is that the place to go?
That's the great spot to go. Yeah. If somebody wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, I'm happy to connect with you. Love to. John Knowlton. Yep.
Awesome. Good. Well, this has been just fantastic. I have loved every minute of it. Didn't know where it was going to go. I know nothing when I get on these things, believe it or not, everybody, but they usually turn out pretty awesome. And this is no exception. So John, thanks for the time today, man. Thanks for all you're doing. You're making a difference out there, man. You've taken all your stuff and you're kind of moving the needle, and I love it in more ways than just business, right? That's what matters. Like a lot of us can, we're in that realm, but man, when we get outside of that, I'm telling you guys, I hope you take a lot of these nuggets with you from today's conversation, because there's so much we can be doing because we're in business, right? Way besides just making money or serving customers. There's a whole nother world of opportunity for us to really get true fulfillment from what we do. Right, John?
Amazing conversation. Thank you, Richard.
All right, brother. And for everyone else, we'll see you on the next STS podcast.
And don't forget, revenue feeds the ego, profit feeds the family. So if you want to see how I can show you at least $100,000 in hidden annual profits in less than 3 minutes, and not only show you where, but how to create that 100K in 6 months or less without additional advertising or marketing spend, guaranteed, just go to sharpenthespiritcoaching.com. See how truly simple it is. That's sharpenthespiritcoaching.com. Do it now.